Listen to this. Obviously, talent is here, but we've just got to finish and go be aggressive the same way they did. I don't want to sit back and just watch other people build, and we stay the same. So we definitely need some call to action. Now, the Cowboys haven't made big offseason splashes recently. Look at this. This surprised me. Their biggest free agent signing over the last 5 seasons, guys, was Gerald McCoy's 3-year, $18 million deal in 2020. Otherwise, their largest deals were for 1 year, worth less than $5 million. The biggest trade they've made in that span was for wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who has averaged 36 receiving yards per game in his 2 seasons with the team. So with all of that, Mina, what should be the Cowboys' biggest priority in the offseason?
Yeah, in the past, the Cowboys' approach has just been to pay their own, but pay them too late. I would not make that mistake with Micah Parsons. First, you got to restructure Dak Prescott's contract. That obviously $90 million cap hit isn't going to stick around. And then with that flexibility you gain, you sign Micah Parsons to the biggest deal that any edge rusher has ever signed. Now, I do think that, to his point, they need to be active in finding a receiver. Obviously, they need to get better running the football and stopping the run. I imagine that'll be a priority in the draft. But priority number 1 is number 11, who is one of the 3 best defensive players in the NFL, in my estimation.
And a lot of people, Mina, would tell you that the Eagles are one of the teams that really knows how to press the advantage on going to their star players early for contract extensions. And obviously the Cowboys have not done that. So Micah Parsons, getting him under contract long-term is a priority. In terms of their own free agents to re-sign, nothing gigantic. Jordan Lewis, the cornerback, Oso Odighizuwa, a couple of guys that they might look to re-sign. But, of course, they're on defense, and they have a new defensive coordinator, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But the Cowboys, in terms of free agency, I think the sense I get is that they've heard what people have said, that they probably believe there's a happy medium somewhere between going nuts in free agency, which they don't believe is the right way to build a roster, and doing pretty much nothing, which is what they did last year. So I do think you'll see them go out, maybe add to the offensive and defensive lines, and definitely add another wide receiver.
Some advice, too. You can't say in the offseason we're all in. Because you said that last year. You send a message to the entire fan base.
Say whatever you want.
And then you're not all in. So that's one thing. Don't set up the fan base by, hey, we're all in. You get everybody excited, and then you don't do anything of relevance.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, we talked about being nuts. Being nuts or going nuts would be not paying Micah Parsons first, not getting that deal done. I agree with Mina wholeheartedly. He's not only the leader on the field, but off the field, he's a guy that's championed the Dallas Cowboys every opportunity he gets a chance to speak. And then I think you go out and you try to talk to John Lynch about acquiring Deebo Samuel, talking to him, will you be in shape? What do you want to do? How do you want to fit into this offense? And now that's a guy that can play running back, a guy that can play receiver, somebody that can be a number 2 and a chess piece off of CeeDee Lamb. And then when you get into the draft, this gives you flexibility of whether you want to pick someone that helps you run the football or someone that helps you stop the run. For years, Mina and I, Marcus, Dan, we've talked about the fact that they can't stop the run, not built well at linebacker, not built well in the middle of that defense from a defensive tackle perspective, even though you addressed it a couple of years ago in the draft. So if you go get Deebo Samuel, now you build your offense around Dak, and CeeDee Lamb, and maybe you can find a way to stop the run in the middle of the field defensively early in the draft.
Another conversation, too, in this division. It's always been the Cowboys and somebody else, right? Especially the last decade. Now it's the Eagles and Commanders. And I'm sorry, good luck and make a card. Let's play matchmaker without the swiping. Our first analyst is a diehard Seahawks fan, but she'd rather be lovesick than seasick. And it is Mina Kimes. Our second analyst knows a thing or two about love because he's written a book or 2 about love, Dan Graziano. And our third analyst first love was the Pits, but now he's winning awards and hearts on the big screen. Welcome, Ryan Clark. Mina, our first analyst, let's start with you. Contestant number 1 has spent some time in colder weather, but he's ready to warm up with some new love. Mina, who is Sam Darnold's perfect match?
Kevin, relationships are all about compatibility, and I think Sam Darnold might actually fit well with the Las Vegas Raiders. Here's why. Darnold showed in Minnesota, give him good pass protection, he can really sling it. And while the Raiders don't have the best offensive line, it's a young group that has talented players. I think they would give him enough time to get the ball in the hands of playmakers like Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. This does not prohibit them from drafting a quarterback. It just buys them some time and would give Darnold another chance to be a starter for a team that I think would actually want to be with him, not just settle for him.
That is a match only Elvis would love in a small little chapel that has the light on for 24 hours. Contestant number 2 is the ultimate protector of a 2-time MVP, but now maybe looking for a new franchise to protect Roz, who is Ronnie Stanley's perfect match.
Well, it's great to be wanted, but it's even better sometimes to be needed. And if you watched the Super Bowl, you know the Kansas City Chiefs need some help at left tackle. Once upon a time, they acquired a tackle from the Baltimore Ravens, Orlando Brown. They could repeat that this year on the free agent market. If the Baltimore Ravens don't want Ronnie Stanley back, wouldn't be surprised to see the Chiefs poking around on him in free agency. He would solve a major need of theirs. And of course, not that this isn't true with the Ravens, but every free agent wants to sign with a team that gives them the best chance to win a championship.
And finally, contestant number 3 has been the second choice in Cincinnati, but he's ready to be someone's number 1 and one and only RC, who is the perfect match for T. Higgins.
This may come as a surprise, but I'm going to say the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels. And look, it's Valentine's Day, and everybody wants to be the one. But football is different. It's okay to be a QB or a wide receiver polygamous. And with a guy like T. Higgins, he's already been a brother wide receiver along with Jamar Chase. So bring him over with T. Higgins. Yes, he won't get all 7 days, but he may get 4. And on that special night, when he's the number 1, he'll get to shine and be on the arms of the great Jaden Daniels.
Ooh, okay. We see that potential love connection. And I'm done with this. There's no doubt that the Bengals have had more success when T. Higgins is available. I've peaked in my career, guys. This was it. Bengals went 8-4 when Higgins played last season compared to 1-4 when he didn't. They averaged more points per game, and Joe Burrow averaged 23 more yards per game. And interestingly enough, Jamar Chase loved it when T was there. Look at the numbers, because, of course, the focus of the defense, not just on number 1, it was help there on the other side. So, Graz, we heard Joe Burrow, and let me tell you, if a mic was hot, Joe Burrow was talking all last week on Radio Row, explaining the situation, and he made it sound so easy and simple about, hey, how do we keep the family together here? Is it that simple?
Well, no, obviously, no, it's not that simple, and there's a couple of reasons why. One, what is Joe Burrow actually talking about in terms of his willingness to work with his own contract? Is he willing to give back money the way Aaron Rodgers did when he got to the Jets, or is he just talking about kicking the can down the road in terms of cash and cap? So that has yet to be answered. But regardless of that, the biggest obstacle the Cincinnati Bengals face in signing any free agent ever is their preferred contract structure. They insist on a contract structure that they do not guarantee any money beyond the first year. They made an exception for Joe Burrow. If Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson insist on second-year guarantees, then the Bengals are either going to have to change the way they've always done business, or they're going to have to say goodbye to those guys. So it's tricky right now. We don't know exactly what will happen with Jamar Chase and his extension. T. Higgins can be franchised again. It would cost about $26 million. Not ridiculous, but also maybe not something they want to do in light of all their other needs. So no, Kevin, not that simple. Bengals are in for a tricky offseason.
Well, first, I'll say I love Joe Burrow putting pressure on the franchise to rethink the way they structure contracts, as Dan talked about. He brought up the example of the Philadelphia Eagles, who seem to be able to afford everyone in large part because they put a lot of cash up front, big signing bonuses, particularly with some of these guys that they've signed on offense. That's great. And I do think if the Bengals did that, they could retain more of their free agents. The problem for them, though, is unlike the Philadelphia Eagles, they have drafted extremely poorly on defense. This is part of the reason why the Eagles are able to spend so much on offense, is that they hit on so many picks on defense. The Bengals, unfortunately, have not. And then the other issue with Higgins in particular, RC can speak to this as well, he is so far and away the gem of free agency, the receiver that many teams will want, that even if they restructure Burrow's contract and give big signing bonuses and could afford him, they might still get priced out because he's in so much demand and other teams are willing to break the bank. So it's not impossible, but I do think it would be difficult.
Mina, that's exactly what I talked about yesterday, is that you can have these heavy contracts offensively when you're Philadelphia because of the young talent on the defensive side of the ball that you've had yet to pay. They don't have that in Cincinnati. Also, with Al Golden now becoming the defensive coordinator, you're going to try to find ways to make this defense better. And maybe this is an opportunity where you go to Joe Burrow and you say, look, you had an historic season. We watched Jamar and T. Higgins dominate, but we still didn't make it to the playoffs because we couldn't get stops. And so now you're going to have to earn that contract. You're going to have to show us that you're worth it without having a 1A and a 1B wide receiver. And to the other point that Mina made is this. Yes, you can sign A.J. Brown and you can sign Devontae Smith because you're talking about a guy who's the third highest paid wide receiver in A.J. Brown and someone who is farther down the list in Devontae Smith. With Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you could possibly be talking about the number 1 paid wide receiver by a large amount in Chase and the number 2 or 3 guy in T. Higgins.
Yeah, and no matter how many points you put up, you still got to stop somebody. Keep in mind the Bengals had 4 losses this season when they scored 30 points.
What if I told you that the Cowboys finally made a bold move this offseason? Yeah, I know, it sounds crazy, right? But before we get into the potential blockbuster trade for Deebo Samuel, let's talk about why this would be such a game changer. For years, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office have taken a cautious approach in free agency. Instead of making aggressive moves to bring in star talent, they've settled for low-risk signings. Remember Gerald McCoy? He was one of the biggest signings in recent years, and he didn't even play a snap for the team. And let's be real, if the Cowboys want to compete at the highest level, they need to change this passive approach. The time for playing it safe is over. Do you think the Cowboys have been too passive in free agency? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's talk about the player who could completely transform the Cowboys offense, Deebo Samuel. This guy isn't just a wide receiver, he's a weapon. Explosive, versatile, and dangerous with the ball in his hands. Deebo can do it all. Line up outside, play in the slot, and even take snaps out of the backfield. Imagine him alongside CeeDee Lamb. Defenses wouldn't know who to focus on. One of the biggest issues for Dallas last season was the lack of a true second option in the passing game. Brandon Cooks had his moments, but he wasn't the consistent threat the team needed. Adding Deebo would instantly change that, giving Dak Prescott another elite target and opening up the playbook for Mike McCarthy. Look at teams that made aggressive moves for playmakers, like the Eagles with A.J. Brown. It paid off big time. Could Deebo be that kind of move for Dallas? Would he be the missing piece for the Cowboys offense? Vote in the comments yes or no. Alright, bringing in Deebo Samuel sounds incredible, but how can the Cowboys actually pull this off? First, there's the financial challenge. Dallas is already dealing with a massive contract for Dak Prescott, and Deebo isn't cheap. To make this move work, the Cowboys would have to restructure some contracts, possibly moving money around with players like Zach Martin, or even reworking Prescott's deal. Then comes the trade itself. The 49ers aren't just going to give Deebo away. Dallas would need to make a strong offer, maybe a high draft pick, or even a package including a player. Could someone like Michael Gallup be part of the deal? After all, Gallup hasn't lived up to expectations, and a fresh start in San Francisco might benefit both sides. The big question is, would Jerry Jones finally be willing to take an aggressive approach? If you were the Cowboys GM, what would you offer the 49ers for Deebo? Drop your trade ideas in the comments. If the Cowboys land Deebo Samuel, it won't just change the offense, it'll reshape the entire roster strategy. With Deebo and CeeDee Lamb leading the passing game, Dallas wouldn't need to prioritize another wide receiver. Instead, they could shift focus in the draft to areas that need serious reinforcement, like the defense or the run game. Think about it. If the Cowboys finally have a dynamic, game-changing offense, wouldn't it make sense to invest in a dominant defense to complement it? A top-tier cornerback, a defensive tackle to boost the line, or even a young, explosive running back to balance the offense. All of these will become key targets in the draft. So here's the question. After trading for Deebo, what should the Cowboys prioritize in the draft? Defense or offense? Drop your answer in the comments. Alright, let's be real. How likely is this trade? Would Jerry Jones actually pull the trigger on a move this bold? Historically, the Cowboys have played it safe, avoiding blockbuster trades. But maybe, just maybe, this is the offseason where things change. The NFC is wide open, and adding Deebo Samuel could be the missing piece to take Dallas from playoff disappointment to true contender. Of course, there's always the risk of another offseason, passing by with no major moves, just the same old talk without action. And if that happens, we might be looking at another year of what could have been. So here's the final question. If this trade happens, do the Cowboys instantly become Super Bowl favorites? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that bell so you don't miss any Cowboys updates.